Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's webinar on the course of food science offered at Stellenbosch University. So our program this evening is starting off by myself. My name is Gunnar Zigger. I'm the current chair of the Department of Food Science here at Stellenbosch University. So I'll be running through the welcoming introductions and just give you a brief overview of the agenda. I'll also be presenting, and I'll also just quickly introduce my co-presenters so they can all give you a wave. We have Dr. Janine Marais, also Dr. Deborah van der Merwe, and we have two of our postgraduate students, Anisu Mukwane and Catherine Ward, who will be speaking to later. So the program is, after some welcoming introductions, I will give you an overview of the food science course, after which Dr. Marais will tell you a little bit more about the differences between university and school, how assessments work, and just give you a little bit of an introduction as to the differences in learning material, the amount of work, and taking responsibility for your studies. Dr. van der Merwe, who has joined us recently from industry, brings the industry perspective and will tell you a lot more about what you can expect from career-wise after studying food science. And then our two students, Anisu and Catherine, will give you some of their perspectives as to how they found being undergraduate students, what student life was like for them, what they're doing now, and what their expectations are in terms of going into the food industry once they've graduated with their master's degrees. All right. So let's move into our agenda, and as we'll have some time for questions and answers at the end. We also have Monica Basson and Precious Canham sitting in. We'll be able to answer any questions that the rest of us can't answer around entry requirements and some other administrative questions that you might have. Right, so what is food science? Well, there's lots of definitions and textbook definitions about food science, and I'll leave those on the screen just for a little bit, but I like to talk about food science and explain food science in terms of the food system as everything that happens from the farm gate to the consumer's plate. That's where our responsibility lies. So if you go to the supermarket, which I'm sure all of you do, everything that you see in the supermarket that you can eat or drink has had a food scientist's involvement in it. So whether it be cool drinks, chocolates, baked goods, sweets, confectionery, processed foods, anything to that effect, food scientists have been involved in the production and the processing and the development of those foods. So the three things that food scientists need to balance are making sure that we provide safe food, making sure that food is nutritious, and also that the sensory acceptability, so that's the taste, aroma, mouthfeel, color of those foods are acceptable to the consumers. We can't have any one of those not being fulfilled, because it doesn't help. We have food that's really nutritious, tastes great, but everyone's dying of food poisoning. On the contrary, we wouldn't want the food to be really safe and really nutritious, but taste so appalling that no one would want to eat it. That wouldn't serve a purpose either. So as I mentioned, the gate to plate. So that's also why food science is in the Faculty of Agri-Sciences, because we're closely connected to what's happening on the farm during primary production. So all livestock, fruit and vegetables or crops Once they're farmed and once they leave the farm gate, that's when the food scientists take over in converting and preserving those foods to increase their shelf life and making sure that they reach the consumer's plate as safe, nutritious, and sensorily acceptable foods. So why is food science so important? Well, we've all heard about population growth. The world's population is expected to reach close to 11 billion people by the end of the century. And the majority of that growth is happening in the African continent. So you can see the world's projected population by 2100, India and China, which are the most populous at the moment, they're actually slowly declining in terms of population growth, whereas in sub-Saharan Africa, population is still growing. So we need to be able to feed this growing number of people, and we still have major problems in the world in terms of the number of people that go hungry every year. So in 2015, when the United Nations brought out the Sustainable Development Goals, one of which is to end hunger, there was about 615 million people that were chronically hungry in the world. Unfortunately, that number has increased since then and is now well in excess of 800 million people who suffer from chronic hunger in the world. So you can see we have a problem. Furthermore, about a third of all food that is produced and intended for human consumption is lost, either before it even reaches the consumers or it is wasted by consumers. So that amounts to about 1.3 billion tons of food that goes to waste every year. Just imagine all the hungry mouths that amount of food could feed. And it's not only the food that is lost and doesn't reach consumers, but it's also the losses in terms of the resources that go into producing that food, all the water that is used. Agriculture uses about 70% of the water used in any given country, all the land that is used, the energy and electricity, as well as all the people working in agriculture. All of that effort has gone to waste if that food doesn't reach the consumers. What happens if consumers go hungry? Well, we don't reach food and nutrition security. Now, we've all heard about food security, which normally just talks about whether there's enough food for everyone. But it doesn't matter if we have enough food, we also need to have the right amount of nutrition in that food. So food and nutrition security exists when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and food preferences to lead an active and healthy lifestyle. So you'll see we need preferences, refers to many of the sensory aspects of food. Food needs to be nutritious and it needs to be safe. So you can see how food scientists' responsibility is woven into this definition. All right. So, more reasons for studying food science. I always like to say, do you know anyone that doesn't eat? Well, even at the worst of times, everyone needs to eat. So job security is always sure for food scientists because no matter what's happening in the world, people still need to eat. So the food industry is consumer driven. It combines science with creativity. If you think about all the new products that are coming onto the market, I've mentioned the job security, the very diverse working environment, and Dr. van der Merwe will expand on that a little bit later when she talks about the different career paths available to food scientists. The world is a small planet, getting smaller all the time. Our food that we eat is from a global perspective. We have food from all over the world, ingredients from all over the world, suppliers all over the world. So if you're working in the food industry, there's always a good chance that you might be traveling somewhere in the world, either to go and see new innovations or visit new suppliers, or possibly if you're looking to export the the company that you're working at, looking at those markets. Food security we've mentioned, and we're always looking for new innovation in new products, innovation in ways that we preserve and process food to make it more sustainable and less wasteful. Job opportunities, I'm just going to touch on lightly. As I said, that'll be discussed in quite some detail by Dr. van der Merwe, but there's a whole host of different job functions, anything from entrepreneurial through to research, product development. There's something for people that prefer just sitting in a laboratory and being involved in quality control and quality assurance. And then for the more adventurous product development or even ingredient sales and even on the marketing side of things. But more about that later. Right, so if we have a look at the course content, the BSc Food Science at Stellenbosch is a professional bachelor's degree, which means it's not just a 3-year degree, it's actually a 4-year degree, and you can go straight into master's after you've completed the 4-year degree. So the study material builds on itself. So in the first year, we have the foundational subjects of maths, physics, computer skills, biology, chemistry, and some food science. You'll see as we move through the years, in the second year, we still have chemistry, biochemistry, biometry, which is statistics of biological systems, microbiology, really the foundational sciences of food science, and then some more food science. And then when we move to third and fourth year, we move more to the applied science field, where we're looking at how these foundation sciences of chemistry, microbiology, and biochemistry are applied to foods and food processing and food products. So you'll see much more applied chemistry and biochemistry, as well as microbiology, and a whole lot more food science in the third year. And in the fourth year, we end off with some engineering aspects, as well as a whole host more credits of food science. And we'll talk more about what happens in the fourth year. But there, everything, all the foundational and applied sciences are put together, and students divide into groups, and they really have to apply all of that and develop a new food product, from an idea to a product on the table, with all the chemical, microbiological, and sensory testing done, design the packaging material, the label, and do all the sensory testing to make sure that the product is acceptable to consumers, that consumers would want to buy it, and of course that it's also safe and tasty. So down to the admission requirements. You need a 60% average in your school leaving certificate. You need English or Afrikaans at a 50% level. And then the two really important ones are mathematics at a minimum of 60% and physical sciences also at a minimum of 50%. So you don't need biology, but you do need mathematics and physical sciences, not maths literacy, core mathematics. Those are the minimum entry requirements, but food science is a selection program. So the better you do in those subjects, the better your chances of being selected will be. Some information on bursaries. There's a couple of websites that you can look at. SAFOST is the South African Association for Food Science and Technology. The FoodBevCETA, a really good site is allbursaries.co.za. You can also have a look at the university's yearbooks. There's one on bursaries and loans that has lots of information on potential bursaries. And then a couple of others that you can Google for the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. And then some of your bigger food manufacturers often have bursaries available. So Unilever, Nestle, Famous Brands, Pioneer Foods, Tiger Brands. And if you Google for food science bursaries, I'm sure some of those will come up. Right, it's now time to move over to our next presenter, and that's Dr. Marie. I just need to give her control of the slides. Over to you, Dr. Marie.
So, good evening, everyone. I am very excited to speak to you tonight about life at university and to explain how it differs from what you know now when you're at school. We will go through some real life examples, what you can expect, and I will also share with you some practical tips and how to help you succeed at university. So, going from school to university is quite a big shift. Where you're at school, you are given a map, perhaps, and everything is laid out for you already. At university, you will only be given a compass and you will need to find your own way through the university system and through your curriculum. So, at university, you have a lot of freedom, but that freedom comes with a great responsibility. And you might arrive feeling like you know a lot and then realize, goodness, there's a lot more to learn, which is a good thing. So it's normal to feel unsure about yourself in your first year. Many students experience what we call imposter syndrome, and it's when you're feeling that you're not good enough or fearing that someone would think you're a fraud, even though you are doing well. So you need to remember that you belong here and you were selected for a reason, and we know that you can succeed. What is one of the biggest challenges or one of the biggest changes from school to university? It's the time and the workload. So there's longer hours that you'll spend and you'll have a much higher workload. Um, you have to treat university like a full-time job. So if we can explain this in terms of the credits for the modules, 1 credit results into 10 notional hours. So in the first year of food science, there's 132 credits, which translates to 1,320 hours. So if we divide that by 33 weeks, it means that you need to spend at least 40 hours a week on your food science work, which translates to a work week, a normal work week. So you have to expect longer working days than you are used to now, with working through some evenings and weekends as well. And you'll face challenges balancing your academic and personal life. You have to think of the semester like a roller coaster. There will definitely be ups and downs. And once you start, you can't get off. You'll have to go on until the end. And the goal is just to keep the momentum and just to stay on the ride. And then at university, there's a lot of freedom, but it means that you have to create your own structure. So if you're not naturally a structured person, you have to learn to be like that. No one will check on you if you attend class. No one will know that you're missing, but you must attend all contact sessions. You have to be present, you have to take notes, and you have to connect with your peers. Think of your academic journey at university like a fitness journey. If you don't train regularly, you will lose progress or you will not be fit. You will be responsible for managing your schedule. No more reminders or checklists like you may have at school now. You have to learn to use your calendar. You have to check your timetables, check SunLearn, which is our online platform, or STEMLearn now. And you have to read your emails, which might be a big change for you. And you have to do this every single day. Often you won't get detailed study guides. You'll be expected to study the whole textbook and the lecture content. So it is very important to attend classes because lecturers like to give the advantage to those attending, and they'll give hints and tips or place emphasis on certain work in class time. Most important thing is to be proactive. You have to start early and you have to start planning ahead, communicate early if you're struggling, and speak up before the deadline. Then people will want to, or we will be willing to help you. School is also very structured with regular guidance, whereas at university, like I've alluded to, it's self-directed learning. You create your own pace. The lecturers will also have different styles. So you might get some people who are teaching and you will sit and listen and you will take notes. But you might have some lecturers who have a flipped classroom approach. So they will expect you to go through the module content in your own time. And then the class time will be used for discussions. You may have one or many lecturers per module, which can be challenging. Each person can have their own style as well. And the class sizes may also vary. So at food science, we typically have an average of 60 students per module or per class. But in other modules, especially in your first year, there might be hundreds of students. So you'll have to get used to being known by your student number. And you have to learn your student number in your first year, because in all communication, that will be the way that people will refer to you or will know you. Then the exciting thing about university is that you will get to know people from all walks of life and many different people. There will be diversity or differences in the provinces or countries that they come from, their religions or cultures, their ages, personality types, as well as socioeconomic levels and backgrounds. And this diversity is very important. It enriches your experience and your class discussions. It also challenges some of your assumptions, and it requires an open-mindedness and respect. Group work is also a common thing that you will have to do at university, and it teaches you valuable skills like teamwork, collaboration, conflict resolution as well, and networking. And this is especially important as a food scientist, because food science is actually, or the food industry is actually a close-knit industry. Most people know each other, and you will have to get to know your classmates, and you might be colleagues one day. So it's very important to get to know your peers and to be able to work with them effectively. Then there is also a lot of diversity in the curriculum. So unlike school, at university, you have choice and you can specialize. In the food science degree, you'll follow a set curriculum with a lot of different module types in it. But each subject or module forms part of a bigger picture or part of a piece of the puzzle. And lecturers will typically explain this to you or give you relevance on why this module is important and how you will use it. Some modules will be foundational, and these are especially the ones in your first and your second year, and some will build on that knowledge. So it's important to not see every module as a standalone. You must see how they are integrated. And at the end, you have to see the curriculum and the different modules as things that are filling your toolbox. Throughout your degree, you'll gather tools, and these will be knowledge, skills, insights, and experiences. And at the end, your toolbox will reflect your own efforts, which means that at graduation, everyone's toolbox will look different, because everyone will grow and develop or make use of opportunities differently throughout this journey. Then when we get to assessments and how they differ from school and at university, you might have frequent tests at school, whereas at university, there might be fewer tests or exams, but more challenging assessments where you'll have to think more and integrate a lot of types of knowledge into these assessments. So the assessment types that you're used to, like tests and exams and quizzes and maybe short surveys, will still be there at university, but there will be a lot more choice or a lot more diversity, like lab reports and case studies and practical reports, even presentations and open book tests where you can use your notes. At school, you might be used to regular feedback on all your assessments. Where at university, we aim to give you feedback on everything, but it may be less frequent. But when we give feedback, it will be more detailed, and we will expect that you read through it carefully and that you see how you can use those feedback notes in future assessments to improve. And then what is taken very seriously is that you have to be able to do research and use the knowledge, but not copy the knowledge. So plagiarism or copying is taken very seriously. We have a policy about that. And so copying is not tolerated. We use a similarity checking tool, like it's called Turnitin, where we can see if you copied anyone's work or any work available from other sources. And you'll have to learn to properly reference where did you get this information. And there's many different tools that will expose you to, like EndNote, Mendeley, and Zotero, for example. You also need to understand how you can use artificial intelligence or AI at university level. And we have a policy about that now because it's a hot topic and a lot of people are using it. So to guide you through how you can use it, and we'll indicate that for each assessment. But in short, or in general, generative AI, so asking AI to generate information for you, is not allowed at university. Then there will be components of individual work, but if you're used to working on your own and just doing your own thing, you will have to get used to group work activities as well. It's very important as part of the rounding off of individuals for professional careers. So individual tasks typically includes essays that you write or lab reports. You have to study and read by yourself and write a test or exam. But then group work activities might be examples of doing a project with someone, or a tutorial, which is like an open book test, or case studies and presentations that you have to do with one or two or more other individuals. So in food science, group work is really essential. And in the food industry, you will very seldomly work by yourself. You will always work in a team, and you'll have to be able to collaborate. And then something that will change drastically is where you might be used to your parents managing your communication with the school and making arrangements for you or guiding you through everything. You are now responsible. So once you register for your university degree, your parents become the funder and you manage your own affairs. So your parents are not involved in your academic journey directly. And you need to learn to communicate clearly, professionally, and in advance. So if you've missed a class, or you need an extension, or you're unsure about anything, you have to email your lecturer, and you have to learn how to do that timeously as well. I've put an example here of how an email subject line will look. I know it's not directly relevant now, but for example, you'll always include your student number because that's your tracking number. That's how we know who you are. And then your module and what the topic is. So every interaction at university is building your professional reputation. And that starts from the first moment when you are registered. It's also important at university. I know some people already have exposure to different technologies and digital literacies, but we do get students from diverse backgrounds. So it is important that you learn at university, especially in your first year, to email professionally, to use online learning platforms that we use to share the module content with you, like Sunlearn or STEMlearn, to collaborate with people online using, for example, Google Docs or Teams, and to be able to complete assessments online, or to complete quizzes online, or submit your work online. You also have to learn to back up your work, because any digital failures or technological failures is not an excuse for not submitting an assignment. And you'll have to learn to navigate these digital platforms effectively and efficiently. And through everything, we're not trying to stress you out. It's giving you the reality check, but there is support available. And I want to really encourage you to ask for help, because asking for help is a sign of maturity and not one of failure. And places where you can find help is to ask your lecturers during office hours, or to ask academic advisors, your tutors, the writing center, you can ask your peers, and there's many more. The university also has a selfhelp.sun.ac.za, which is a new platform that gives access to many student support services. And it's also part of the Integrated Student Success Initiative, which means that we don't only throw you in the deep side, because we know going from school to university is quite a steep learning curve. We are there to help, and there's many different support systems. We also would like to encourage you to get involved, join societies, join the Food Science Association and the Agri Sciences Association, join sport teams and even your clusters for their events, find your community, and this will really help you to succeed in your academic journey as well. Then, what are we aiming for? Why are you going to university? Yes, you want to get a degree and you want to become a food scientist, but more holistically, we want you to have graduate attributes, and we will work on these throughout the 4 years of the food science curriculum. So we want you to develop an inquiring mind. You have to think why. You have to become a lifelong learner and not just be happy with what you know now. You want to know more. A critical thinker, an engaged citizen who can be a leader or collaborate in a team, and who can work with a diverse group of people. We would like for you to be a dynamic professional, which means that you are a problem solver and you use sustainable and effective technologies, and you can be innovative. And we also would like for you to be a well-rounded individual in the end, to really be mindful of your sporting journey, your cultural journey, as well as your intellectual life, and to have a work-life balance, to make informed decisions, and to really invest in your own personal development throughout this journey. So what are some of the closing thoughts, or taking everything together? The main thoughts is that university will be challenging. It will be much more challenging than school, but it is such a great journey to transform you into a professional individual that is ready for the workplace. So I encourage you, if you come to Stellenbosch University and Food Science, to keep showing up, to keep learning, and to keep asking questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question. And what is your best tools for success is to have balance, consistency, and curiosity. So we welcome you to this journey, and we believe that you will be successful. So thank you for your time.
Okay, good evening, everyone. It's my turn. I've just requested control so I can take charge of our slideshow. There it is. So I'm very excited to see so many of you this evening online and considering food science as a career, or just curious enough to sit in this evening and to listen about what it is about, and what the course is about, what university is about, and what the industry life as a food scientist would look like. So I'm going to dive straight into it. I'll be talking about what to expect from working in the food industry. And like Professor Seeger mentioned, I worked in the food industry until less than 2 years ago. Got about 13 years experience in the food industry, and I'm still quite connected with the industry. I'm going to start with an introduction, just basically tying into what Professor Seeger spoke about in terms of what food science is, but more of an industry definition. I'll talk about the key roles of food scientists, and you'll see that that links closely with the course design and what we actually teach you, and what career paths are available in the food industry currently, and what just a reference to what types of work people do, and then what can you expect from working, finishing off with what can you actually expect. Okay, so to recap, what is food science, or a bit of a different slant on that definition we saw earlier? It's the physical, biological, and chemical makeup of food and the principles underlying food processing. Or to put it in a different way, it is the reason we have safe milk, crunchy chips, and shelf-stable snacks. It's where biology meets flavor and chemistry meets convenience. Okay, so the goal of food science is to ensure that our food is safe, nutritious, enjoyable. That was mentioned earlier as well. It tastes good, but also there's a new focus, and or not new. The focus has been on sustainability for a while, but it's becoming more and more important. And together with that, nutrition as well, and a health focus. Okay, just linking with the importance of food science and food scientists, Professor Seeger also referred to that food science is that link between agricultural production and consumer products. So from production, everything that happens in between until the product actually ends up on the shelf is related to food science. So it's that essential processing, packaging, and then getting the actual production or agricultural products to the consumer. Food science is an essential part of that. Okay, so when considering the different key roles of a food science and how, and I just want to put it in context how this is different from the career path. So when I talk about the different roles of a food scientist, these are all the different aspects that you are taught on in your course, but also in small businesses or a small company, or when you start your own company as a food scientist, these are all the different roles and not limited to these. These are just some of them that I included in the slides here, but it can be more complex, and it's often more complex than that. So I'm going to run through these roles. So first of all, research and development. So most food products has an element where it's researched and developed, or it's also referred to as new product development. Food processing, quality control, food safety, sensory evaluation, packaging and storage, nutrition and dietary considerations of the food product, and regulatory compliance. So these are all essential parts of a food scientist's role. Or to put it in a more of a visual way, food science consists of product development, safety and packaging, sensory evaluation, nutrition, and sustainability. Okay, so jumping to all the different career paths available in the food industry, from creating new snacks to ensuring food labels comply with the regulations. There's a lot of opportunities and diverse jobs available in both the private sector and also in the public sector. And this includes startups or large corporations or even academia. So I'm going to run down the different career paths, once again, not limited to all of these, and then I'll zoom in on some of them. We won't have time. If I have to give you details on all of them, we'll be here for the rest of the evening, or hopefully eventually you'll be in my class and then I'll fill you in on that. Okay, so I mentioned new product development and research and development, quality assurance and quality control, food processing and manufacturing, regulatory compliance, food safety and microbiology, sensory science. You can take a consulting route in specific areas, or you can consult as a overall on food-related matters. You can even go into technical sales and marketing, food technology and engineering. So engineering is quite an important part of food science in that design of equipment and production plants. Or you can choose to go into research and academia. Okay, so let's talk about product development, or NPD as it's known in the industry. So when you choose product development as a career path, your focus will be on developing new products or to improve existing products or even to develop new packaging. So NPD, or product development, is a concept that's used in a lot of different industries, and there's a specific way and stepwise process that's been designed and how it is specifically used in the food industry. Part of your work would be to research ingredients, processes, and packaging. And also a large part of it will be to focus on innovation and to stay on top of new developments and trends in the food industry. So I've just popped in some very exciting pictures and bright pictures and interesting products that I've seen at innovation shows and presentations over the last few years. So product development is really the creative part and a very exciting part of food science. All the different career paths and aspects in the roles are equally important. And as Dr. Marie mentioned, food science really is a team sport. In product development, you work very closely with a quality team, with a marketing team, with a food safety team. It really is coming together of a lot of different expertise and different teams. But it's also very colorful, very exciting. It's where we follow the trends, we're inspired by trends, or we create trends. And I was lucky enough to work in product development for 6 years, and also part of marketing and launching many different products across different categories in the food industry. And these pictures came from an innovation show that I attended in Germany. And just another exciting example would be plant-based fish. I tasted some excellent canned plant-based fish and a plant-based mackerel spread while attending that innovation show. Okay, so then closely linked to new product developments, research and innovation. And this type of role would be focused on looking at, or would involve looking at developing sustainable packaging. We see more and more moves towards sustainable packaging, big focus on sustainability in the world, everywhere, in all industries. You would also be focusing on exploring alternative ingredients. And another example from the innovation show I attended, party bugs. Looking at alternative sources of protein, algae, for example, could also be used. And then looking at AI, data science, applying data science and biotechnology in food development. Okay, so that's new product development and research and development. Very important potential career path in the food industry would be quality assurance and quality control, which works very closely. If you choose to go into this part of the industry, you would work very closely with a production team, but also with a product development team. And in this type of role, you'd be responsible for ensuring that products meet safety and labeling standards, and you'll also be responsible for testing and monitoring texture, flavor, color, and shelf life. If you choose to work in food processing and manufacturing, you'll be mostly based in a food processing plant, overseeing production processes, and also be responsible for food safety. If you choose to work on regulatory compliance, so where does the regulations come in? So we've got a lot of legislation around food products, whether it's the composition or how it should be labeled or how the weight should be indicated. And that's where there's also the opportunity to work in or have a focus in your role on regulations. And this type of work would involve ensuring that products and processes comply with regulatory standards and regulations. Focusing on food safety, quality, and labeling, or and you would need to stay informed and updated and implement regulatory changes. An example of such a company in South Africa would be Food and Allergy Consulting and Testing Services, where I worked for 7 years. And this company consults on all the different food legislation in South Africa, all the relevant legislation, and that also creates the opportunity to test food products. So a lab was developed and allergen testing is done and all food-related testing is done. And that also opened the opportunity to provide training to the food industry of how food scientists can make sure that their products comply with all the relevant legislation. And that also leads into quality assurance and looking at product integrity. Apologies, it's my neighbor's generator. I'm in load shedding. Okay, food safe. Oh, so then also a very prominent and a very important career path in the food industry that you can choose as a food scientist would be looking at food safety and microbiology. So like Professor Seeger mentioned, it's no use having a product, a very good product that is safe, a product that is tasty and ticks all the boxes, but it's not food safe. So in this type of role, you'd be responsible for identifying and preventing contamination. You'll look at bacteria and allergens, or all kinds of other contaminants. You would monitor the critical control points in manufacturing, and you'd be responsible for effective cleaning methods and chemicals. Okay. Or you could choose to focus on sensory science. So Dr. Marais is a sensory specialist, so in academia, but works very closely with a lot of people in the food and food scientists and industry who's chosen sensory focus as a part of their career. Sensory analysis is a scientific method used to measure and interpret the sensory attributes of food products. And it's also used to assess the quality, safety, and appeal of food products. It involves using sensory panels. You can have groups of trained tasters and or consumer groups. And it's applied in quality control, product development, shelf life studies, and consumer research. Yes, you do eat a lot and taste a lot of food products if you work in product development, and it involves a lot of sensory evaluation. Or you can choose to become a consultant. The food industry consulting would involve a wide range of services focused on helping business improve their operations or to develop new products, enhance their overall success. There's all different kinds of consultation that you can do. Okay, so that's just a quick glance into some of the roles that you can or some of the career paths that you can follow in the food industry. And before I wrap up, I just want to say that's one thing about the food industry, or having worked as done my time in the industry as a food scientist, that is so exciting about the career path is there are so many different options, and you can change and evolve, or you can specialize. So, and I think that's quite unique in terms of a career and a professional and your professional path. Okay, so to wrap up, what can you expect from working in the food industry? You can expect to play an important role and to have the opportunity to make a difference, to keep on learning and evolving, and to be part of an exciting and an essential industry, and to hopefully have a delicious career path. Thank you.
Hey, good evening, everyone. So I'll be sharing my food science journey with you all, which is surreal because 6 years ago, I didn't even know what I wanted to study. All I knew from visiting Stellenbosch and Matric was that I wanted to be here, not a Tux like the rest of my siblings. So I'm going to briefly touch on what to expect with each academic year, as well as touch on resources such as funding and academic support that I receive from the university. So I'm an international student from Zimbabwe. So my journey started a bit differently because, for starters, I missed orientation because my visa didn't come out on time. Luckily, the university has a second orientation in place for students who missed the first one. And because I wasn't in a university residence, I was part of a private student organization, or a PSO, where I met fellow agri-science students. So the goal of first year is to smoothly transition from high school to university. So you will have access to mentors to guide you through early challenges, and not just academic challenges, social life and homesickness as well. So in the first year, like it was mentioned, it's mostly BSc modules. And I would say the modules to look out for are maths and chemistry modules, and to get help early because they can be challenging to a lot of people. The second semester has one food science module, and there are practicals such as fudge practicals for crystallization and pretzel making, but I can't really say much about that because most of my first year was during COVID, so we did these online. And then the second year is still majority BSc modules like biochemistry. However, you do get one food science module a semester, both of which are quite practical. We had a canning demonstration in the first semester, and we had color measurements, which doesn't seem like much, but because there's a snowball effect in food science, all of this information becomes relevant in your final year. And then for 3 of my 4 academic years, I was a student athlete. And what I loved most about being a student athlete was that multi-sport made it, and they emphasized that if you are a student athlete, you have to graduate. So there are a lot of check-ins on well-being and academic performance because the university wants healthy, not just physically healthy athletes, but mentally healthy athletes as well. And then, unfortunately, in my second year, I failed chemistry 264. However, I did receive academic support from the university. And then in my following year, I passed it. I did end up getting the SADC academic bursary despite failing chemistry. And I would like to stress that you need to go to the university website for information about bursaries you qualify for, even if you are an international student, and apply. Also have a look at ZA bursaries. They post every day and they give criteria on what bursaries you can apply for. For third year, I like to call it the golden year of food science because this is where you get the majority of your food science modules, which are both very practical and theory intensive. Many courses include fieldwork assignments, one of which where we had to inspect an actual food factory for safety violations. So you do get a hands-on experience. And for many students, this is also the year that they do their industry training. And by the end of your third year, you'll have a clear sense of what areas you're passionate about in food science and what you don't want to do. And then in your fourth year, everything that you have been learning from first year is very relevant. And what I like about fourth year is that the transition from university life to industry is smooth because you do liaise with industry partners when you're developing your product. You still have your contacts from your industry training. So I would say it's quite difficult to leave the food science faculty without having some form of connections. And because the curriculum is closely aligned with what's expected in the industry, it will be easy to answer some job interview questions. And if you're lucky, whoever's interviewing you will have probably seen you during our final MPD day. And then lastly, I'm here in the present moment studying my master's in brewing and distilling science. I'm specializing in hops, which is an ingredient in beer. So I've become well acquainted with the beer industry. And at the moment, I'm currently working with an investor who's interested in developing my product for the Saudi Arabian market. And I'm also working with a waste valorization company with another product idea. And if the product works as it should, I will be needing a lawyer for some airtight share agreements. So I would say I have quite enjoyed my 6 years here, and I hope you will too if you apply. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I am Catherine and I'm currently doing my Master's in Food Science. I'm really excited to be speaking to you today to share a little bit about my journey and especially what made my food science experience so valuable and memorable. When I reflect on my time in the program, the first thing that comes to mind isn't actually a subject or a lab practical, it's the people. And I hope you enjoy my pictures because without a doubt, the best part of the food science experience was the amazing people that I met along the way. That includes classmates, lecturers, and the professionals I met during my work experience. Oh, no, not yet. Go back. I'm sorry. I'm just going to go back a slide, sorry. There you go. Of course, I really enjoyed the modules. The range was incredible. One semester you're learning about sensory evaluation, and the next you're learning about food safety. And the next I was knee deep in formulation strategies or product development. But even with such a fascinating content, it was the people that really shaped my experience. We were lucky enough to have a really strong community at Food Science, and a big part of that was the Food Science Association. They organized events that brought us together and made our degree feel more than just attending lectures. It wasn't just writing exams or tests, but we actually felt like we were part of something special. Some of my favorite memories include the welcoming braai at the beginning of each year. It was such a social activity where I met most of my friends I still speak to today. There were run clubs, which were a surprisingly fun way to de-stress during exam seasons. And even if you're like not much of a runner, just joining and being outdoors together really created quite a sense of camaraderie. Then there were the more creative events like the Cluedo Mystery Night, where we turned a lecture hall into a giant detective game. Everyone showed up in themed outfits and there was so much laughter and bonding. And of course, we always look forward to the annual dance every year. The event is such a good celebration of all our hard work, and it felt like matric dance for food science, but better and with wine. All of these moments gave us such a good chance to connect outside of class, and those connections are often translated into the support systems for more stressful academic times. Another major highlight that I would like to point out is the work experience component of the degree. It's a 6-week requirement that you have to do while studying food science, and I honestly think it's one of the most valuable experiences and aspects of the program. Those 6 weeks gave me a chance to step out of the theory and into the real world. I worked at a food manufacturing company where I was exposed to multiple departments, from quality assurance to product development. The experience really opened my eyes up to what a career in food science can actually look like, and just importantly showed me what I definitely do not want to do. For example, I find microbiology fascinating in lectures, but during work experience, I realized it wasn't something I saw myself doing long term. On the other hand, I discovered a real passion for flavors and formulation. I loved being a part of a team that tested different prototypes and adjusted recipes to meet consumer needs. It felt creative and scientific all in the same time. The work experience also allowed me to start building professional relationships. I still keep in touch with my supervisors from that internship, and the many others that came after, and even had really great advice given to me about career options and then postgrad opportunities. It's a great way to start shaping your professional identity while still being a student. And that brings me to where I am now, my master's. Starting my master's in food science was honestly the best decision that I could have made. It's given me a chance to deepen my knowledge, and more than that, I've developed skills that'll carry me into my career. I've learned project management, which has helped me balance research, admin, deadlines, and a social life. I've also become more confident in data organization and analysis, especially when it comes to interpreting results from experiments or sensory panels. It's also taught me a lot about independence, how to lead my own projects, seek out collaboration opportunities, and think critically about the impact that my work is making on the industry. In many ways, I feel like I've transitioned from being a student to a scientist. So to anyone considering this degree, I want to say that food science isn't a subject you study, it's a full experience. You'll grow academically, professionally, and personally. Oh, the light just turned off. Sorry. You'll meet some incredible people, develop meaningful relationships, and gain exposure to real-world food industry early on. It's a journey that prepares you for so many diverse career paths, from product development to regulatory affairs, to sustainability and innovation. So just to end off, thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you become a part of our vibrant little food science community.
Thanks, everyone. I just needed to get back into the controls. So we have time now for questions, and there's been quite a few in the chat, so please have a look at the chat. If there are any more questions, please feel free to post those. Precious, are we able to let people ask questions? Do they have to raise their hand if they want to ask a question?
Yes, they can raise their hand if they want to verbally ask the question. I can allow.
Okay, great stuff. Right, do we have any questions? Please feel free to ask myself or Dr. van der Merwe or Dr. Marais, or if you want to ask Anisu and Catherine more questions about their experiences, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll let you ask your question. Seeing any hands?
No hands, but I do see a question in the chat.
All right. How can I bind the food science with a culinary qualification? Thanks. Yes, that is a good question. In the food industry, very many companies, especially the larger ones that are making ready-to-eat meals or frozen meals and the like, work very closely with chefs in developing those recipes, and then they work closely with the food scientists to be able to prepare those foods and make them stable during processing and storage, so that when you unfreeze them or thaw them, that you end up with something that still resembles a meal created by a chef. Also in product development, they work very closely with chefs from a taste perspective, from a flavoring perspective. And we've had several students that have studied either a chefing course first and have been interested in the science aspects of it, then studying food science. And we've also had a few that have studied food science and then gone on to take courses in chefing or cooking, so that they can combine the science and the art, and have started their own businesses going into product development and so on. So there's definitely scope for that. So if you've got culinary experience and a food science experience, some of the bigger companies would be very interested in those skills. Right, I'm checking if there's any other questions coming through. Do you think this is the right course for someone who enjoys chemistry and hospitality studies but not biology? Well, although biology is not a requirement for the course, we do rely on quite a lot of biology in terms of the microbiology, in terms of food safety aspects. But yes, there is plenty of scope within the food industry to not have to like microbiology and biology, product development and so on. You've always got to have that knowledge, because if you're developing products, you need to know a little bit about the microbiology and the food safety aspects. But if there's other specialists in your team that are covering that, then one doesn't have to do that every day, all day long. So there's definitely scope for that. How does one move? Okay, that's already been answered. If there aren't any questions anymore, I'd just like to ask a personal question that might give a nice viewpoint for others. What are your reasons or desires for pursuing this field that led you to teaching it to others? Sure, maybe I should ask my colleagues for their experiences. Dr. Marais, Dr. van der Merwe, would you like to take a stab at answering that? I see Deborah and both put their cameras on. I'm also happy to weigh in, but I'll give you guys a chance first. So, Deborah?
I just want to phrase that question again. Did I read that correctly? What led me into becoming a food scientist? Is that basically?
Yeah, what were your reasons or desires for pursuing this field that led you to teaching it to others?
Oh, teaching it to others. I'm trying to give the short answer. So I never knew I wanted to do food science. I was enrolled for drama in my first year and then spent some time abroad, and when I came back to South Africa, I realized I can do drama with a food science degree, but I can't do food science with a drama degree. So, and then I got stuck in food science and I never got to that drama degree. So I suppose that's the class theoretical part. Not really, that's just a joke. No, I've really always enjoyed food science, and I've changed my career quite a bit. I did postgrad studies, and then I consulted on legislation and allergen management and risk control. And from there, I got interested in product development, and I worked in product development and then came back into academia and to teach. I've always been passionate about knowledge share and about teaching. And even when I worked in industry and product development, I always had interns job shadowing me or doing holiday work so that they could learn how to do food science. And when we work in academia, we don't only teach, we do research on very relevant and important aspects of food science. So to be able to work in academia and to teach is also an opportunity to further the industry. I grew up on a farm, and I've always been very passionate about production, agriculture, and to have the opportunity to do research and to lead the way in this field and to be able to teach and coach a food scientist and prepare them for the future is my reason for taking up this work. Thanks.
I have a slightly different reason, or not slightly, completely different reason. I wanted to do dietetics, and I didn't get into that program. And then I was advised to consider food science, and I really think that was a critical point in my journey because I am where I should be. Because in food science, there's so much. It's like Dr. van der Merwe said in her presentation about career opportunities. There's so much diversity in the food science degree, and there's a lot of place for different personalities as well. If you like doing the same thing every day, you can be a quality controller. If you like being creative, you can go into new product development. So I really enjoyed the food science degree. I love learning. And then I actually pursued a postgraduate degree, like you heard from Anesu and Catherine. And through that process, I realized that I like science communication, and I like helping people reach their potential. And that's why I went into teaching, is I can help someone who doesn't know what they want to do or don't know their own strengths to really figure that out with them and to develop that into becoming your own version of what you need to be as a professional food scientist in the end. So yeah, that was my journey.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I'll maybe just comment quickly. I was going to study microbiology, then decided to do some psychometric testing. I was told I shouldn't do music or drama, so that didn't really narrow it down. And I actually found out about food science by chance. It was one of the many brochures that was available at the Career Guidance Office. And I just thought it looked interesting because it looked sciencey. And the rest is history. The reason I stayed in teaching throughout my master's degree, I was involved in tutoring and assisting with practicals in the course, and yeah, I just developed a passion for being able to pass that knowledge on and being able to explain it to others in a way that they could understand it, and it sort of grew from there. I've got a lot of questions that have come through on the chat, so I'm going to try and answer as many of those as possible. Is the food science degree internationally accepted? Yes, it most definitely is. Our degree was ranked very highly internationally. We have students, master's students that go and do PhDs overseas. We have BSc graduates that easily get into master's programs overseas, and we have many, many alumni that are working in Europe in the food industry. And well, a lot of the feedback we get is that the companies over there wish they had more South African and Stellenbosch food science students applying for jobs that side. So definitely our degree is accepted, and our students are very much in demand. On that topic, I did see in some of the questions that came through in the registrations that someone said they heard it was extremely difficult to find jobs in this field. That is definitely not the case for our students. Our students, even after their 4 years, find work quite easily in the industry. We actually have industries sending us their job adverts before they advertise anywhere else because they really want Stellenbosch food science graduates. Then I have a hotel school qualification at BTech level plus a postgraduate diploma in education. Do I stand a chance to start food science at master's level? I would have to have a look at that in more detail, but with a BTech and a postgraduate diploma, I don't think the chances are that high of being accepted. But we would need to see your academic record and have a closer look at that. So please feel free to send that through and we can give you some feedback. When developing, making food, does genetic engineering come into place, like genetic modification to make it more flavorful and colorful? The short answer to that is no. We as food scientists are not involved in genetic modification. If there is any genetic modification that is done by biotechnology companies, so things like insulin and so on are produced by companies that have applied biotechnology to specific bacteria that can produce that. But we as food scientists don't practice any genetic modification. How many food science applications do we get? Sorry, my questions are disappearing off my screen because more are coming in. Sorry, how many food science applications do you get? Monica, please help me out here, but we get probably around 150 to 180 applications. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Monica. But yeah, so out of that, the selection is made. If you're interested in a career in food product development, is it more beneficial in the industry to have a food science degree than a culinary degree, which opens more doors in product development? I think as much as there is collaboration between chefs and food scientists, if it's in the food manufacturing industry, I think a food science degree with product development would probably be more beneficial. What are the requirements for me as a postgraduate in professional cookery? I'm not sure. You will have to check with the different institutes of culinary arts and so on, where you can do qualifications in chefing. I wouldn't be able to tell you what the requirements are. Good day, Prof. I'm in research development, currently working in finishing my master's, but I'm in animal science. However, my study focuses on meat science. Can I be accepted for pursuing my PhD in your food science department? So I can only see HN, the initials, but please send me an email. We can discuss that further. But yes, if you have a master's degree and there's sufficient food science relevance and experience, then you would be able to be accepted for a PhD, which would be a generic PhD, not so much a PhD in food science, but you would be able to have supervision within the food science department. How does food science differ too much from dietetics and culinary science? Well, dietetics is really, if we're talking about gate to plate, where food science is, dietetics pretty much takes over once the food is on the plate in terms of working out how much of different foods and food types you should be eating to obtain optimum nutrition, whereas food science is involved in the producing of those foods, preserving and making sure that they are safe. Culinary science is more around the cooking of foods from a fresh state, sort of in a restaurant setting rather than in a manufacturing setting. Does food science differ to food technology? It's really just in the terminology, which goes back historically to when there was universities and universities of technology, and someone in their wisdom decided that if you were doing food science and technology at a technikon, then it was called technology, and if you were doing it at the university, it was called food science. In actual fact, if you're doing it at a university of technology or at a university, we're all doing food science and technology. You can't really split the two because they're completely interlinked. What type of travel opportunities do you offer? Well, we don't really offer any travel opportunities, but if you're working in the food industry, your company might. And if you're doing your postgraduate studies, then depending on where the funding for that project is coming from, there might be opportunities for postgraduate students to travel. I applied for...
Gunnar, I think most of the questions from there have already been answered by the team in the chat.
Okay.
But we do have a hand up right now with I think her name is Mpho, but I'm not sure if it's a mistake hand or she meant that, but I'm just looking for her name so that I can allow her. Okay, there we go. Just want to allow the mic.
Just while you're busy with that, if you don't mind, I just wanted to answer. There was a question here. What is the difference between food science and food technology? So at Stellenbosch, we offer the food science degree. And at Cape Tech or at Technikon level, you can do a food technology degree. And the technology degree is more focused on practical application. And food science, I don't know, Gunnar, if you want to add on to that, how these two differ.
Yeah, the degree programs between universities of technology and universities also differ in the length. Whereas at universities of technology, you're doing a 3-year curriculum, which often has a year of in-service training attached to it, whereas we're doing a 4-year very deeply rooted in science and providing the depth to be able to do serious problem solving once you're in the industry. So that's sort of where the differences are. And I see you raised hand. Please unmute yourself, then you can ask your question.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I just want to find out if one is doing or is very good with maths but hasn't done physics, would they struggle with doing the course? Because I see physics is one of the requirements, if I'm not mistaken, in order to be admitted for the course.
Yeah, so if you don't have maths and physics, then you wouldn't be accepted.
Okay. So my question was if they excel in maths, but they just haven't done physics, so would they struggle with?
Well, yes, you would struggle, but you also wouldn't be admitted because you wouldn't meet the entry requirements. So you wouldn't actually get into the program without the physics. You have to have the maths and the physics to qualify to be accepted.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Just checking if there's any new questions. So there's a question. So does that mean if one was to transfer from University of Technology, would they start from year one in the food science degree? Yes, that is correct. If there are any other questions we haven't answered.
No, there aren't any unanswered questions.
Okay, thanks very much. Yeah, we still have some time if there are more questions. But if there aren't any more questions, then I'd like to thank you all for attending. I hope it's been useful. It'd be great if people could give some sort of indication whether they found the presentations useful and informative. If you do have any other questions, my email is up on the screen, so please feel free to email us any other questions you have. If we can't answer them, we will direct them to someone that can. I'm just seeing another question coming through. Yes, there would not be any credit. So if you've studied at the University of Technology and you transferred to Stellenbosch, you can't transfer any of the credits, because unless you go through a very lengthy process through the Department of Higher Education and Training to have modules accredited, but the chances of that happening are quite slim. Because these a lot of the subjects and modules are at different NQF levels, so usually it's just not possible to transfer any of those credits. Right, well, I'm seeing lots of thanks to the panel. I'd also like to thank everyone on the panel, my colleagues, Dr. Marie and Dr. van der Merwe, and our two students, Catherine and Aniesu, and also to Ms. Canham and Ms. Basson behind the scenes answering the questions and putting the webinar together. Thank you very much for all of your support at the back end and behind the scenes. So with that, please feel free to send us any questions. Enjoy the rest of the evening, and I look forward to hopefully welcoming you, some of you, to the food science department in the near future. Thanks, everyone. Good night.